January 28th, 2020. Joe here at Simple Life Show. Appreciate everybody for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the good social media stuff to keep the rational voices out in front where they belong. The Senate trial is continuing to go on. We have heard from the GOP, the Democrats as well. They are complaining about a lot of different stuff. We are talking mainly about the witnesses and trying to get a lot of the GOP senators to come on board. But I believe what's really important now, and I saw this on Twitter, there was a lot of people that were watching the Pam Bondi she drops a mother of all bombs basically on this entire impeachment inquiry. A lot of the stuff that she says there wasn't really in the news media. In fact, the fact of the matter is that ABC, NBC, CBS, the major three networks out there did not air this speech by Pam Bondi. I believe that was yesterday. And she was very, very forthcoming in how she felt about the whole thing. She breaks the entire thing down. It's about 30 minutes. I kind of broke it up a little bit. I want to play this. I think it's very important. I was actually perusing Twitter, and there was a lot of people that just weren't really aware about all these different types of details with the corruption scandal and so forth with Burisma and the Ukraine, why Trump was really interested in making sure that the corruption was under control before we released millions, if not billions of dollars over into the Ukraine. So a lot of people were just simply not aware of this. There was a lot of surprise from a lot of people that I saw on Twitter. Now, that's a small smattering, but I think that it really does affect how people are viewing this entire thing. It really kind of boils down to a question of, was there something nefarious at play here? I don't think that Trump, personally, from a rational point of view, I don't think he was ever scared of Biden. Biden is a very low energy character. He has a lot of baggage, and he's going to be hard to defeat. I mean, he's going to be very easy to defeat, if he does get the Democratic nomination. I think there's a good chance that Bernie Sanders will get the Democratic nomination if he doesn't get screwed over again this year. I really hope that doesn't happen. I really would like to see a Bernie and a Trump kind of runoff. I think that will create probably the best type of both worlds argument because they're going to be coming from two different ball fields when they're arguing. And there's a lot of rabid Trump supporters, just as many as there's many rabid Bernie supporters out there. So it could be very, very interesting. But what I'm gonna stop rambling on. I'm going to get to this Pam Bondi, her speech that she did in front of the Senate here. And you decide. Listen to the entire thing. You decide if what she's saying makes sense.
They say sham, they say baseless, because they say this because if it's okay for someone to say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's something here worth raising, then their case crumbles. Because they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there is no basis to raise this concern. But that's not what public records show. Here are just a few of the public sources that flagged questions surrounding this very same issue. The United Kingdom Serious Fraud Office, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent, Hunter Biden's former business associate, an ABC White House reporter. Let's look at the facts. In early 2014, Joe Biden, our Vice President of the United States, led the United States foreign policy in Ukraine with the goal of rooting out corruption. According to an annual study published by Transparency International, during this time, Ukraine was one of the most corrupt countries in the entire world. In Ukraine, there's a natural gas company called Burisma. Burisma has been owned by an oligarch named Mykola Solchevsky. Here's what happened very shortly after Vice President Biden was made U.S. point man for Ukraine. His son, Hunter Biden, ends up on the board of Burisma, working for and paid by the oligarch Zlochevsky. In February 2014, in the wake of anti-corruption uprising by the people of Ukraine, Zlochevsky flees the country, flees Ukraine. Zlochevsky, the oligarch, is well known. George Kent, the very first witness that the Democrats called during their public hearings, testified Zlochevsky stood out for his self-dealings even among other oligarchs. House managers didn't tell you that. Ambassador Kurt Volkler explained that Burisma had a, quote, very bad reputation as a company for corruption and money laundering, end quote. House managers didn't tell you that. Burisma was so corrupt that George Kent said he intervened to prevent U.S. aid from co-sponsoring an event with Burisma. You know what this event was? It was a child's contest, and the prize was a camera. They were so bad, Burisma, that our country wouldn't even co-sponsor a children's event. In March 2014, the United Kingdom Serious Fraud Office opens a money laundering investigation into the oligarch Zlochevsky and his company, Burisma. The very next month, April 2014, according to a public report, Hunter Biden quietly joins the board of Burisma. Remember, early 2014 was when Vice President Biden began leading Ukraine policy. Here's how Hunter Biden came to join Burisma's board in April 2014. He was brought on the board by Devon Archer, his business partner. Devon Archer was college roommates with Chris Hines, stepson of Secretary of State John Kerry. All three men, Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, and Chris Hines, had all started an investment firm together. Public records show that April 16, 2014, Devon Archer meets with Vice President Biden at the White House. Just 2 days later, on April 18, 2014, is when Hunter Biden quietly joins Burisma, according to public reporting. And not only 10 days after Hunter Biden joins the board, British authorities seize $23 million in British bank accounts connected to the oligarch Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma. Did Hunter Biden leave the board then? No. The British authorities also announced that it had started a criminal investigation into potential money laundering. Did Hunter Biden leave the board? No. What happened was then, only then, did the company choose to announce that Hunter Biden had joined the board after the assets of Burisma and his oligarch owner, Zlochevsky, were frozen and a criminal investigation had begun. Hunter Biden's decision to join Burisma raised flags almost immediately. One article from May 2014 stated, "The appointment of Joe Biden's son to the board of Ukrainian gas firm Burisma has raised eyebrows the world over." Even an outlet with bias for Democrats pointed out Hunter Biden's activities created a conflict of interest for Joe Biden. The article stated, "The move raises questions about a potential conflict of interest for Joe Biden." Now, even Chris Hines, Hunter Biden's own business partner, had grave concerns. He thought that working with Burisma was unacceptable. This is Chris Hines. He was worried about the corruption, the geopolitical risk, and how bad it would look. So he wisely distances himself from Hunter Biden and Devon Archer's appointments to Burisma. He didn't simply call his stepfather, Secretary of State, and say, I have a problem with this. He didn't tell his friends, hey guys, I'm not getting on the board. I want nothing to do with this. He went so far as to send an email to senior State Department officials about this issue. This is Chris Hines. He wrote, apparently, Devin and Hunter have joined the board of Burisma, and a press release went out today. I can't speak to why they decided to, but there is no investment by our firm in their company. Chris Hines' spokesperson said, the lack of judgment in this matter was a major catalyst for Mr. Hines ending his business relationship with Mr. Archer and Mr. Biden. Now, the media also noticed. The same day, an ABC News reporter asked Obama White House Press Secretary Jay Carney about it. Here's what happened.
Hunter Biden has now taken a position with the largest oil and gas company, holding company in Ukraine. Is there any concern about at least the appearance of a conflict there? See the vice president.
I would refer you to the vice president's office. I saw those reports. Hunter Biden and other members of the Biden family are obviously private citizens, and where they work is not does not reflect an endorsement by the administration or by the vice president or president. But I would refer you to the vice president's office.
You have to fight the cancer of corruption.
But then something strange happened. Just 3 weeks later, a Ukrainian natural gas company, Burisma, accused of corruption, appoints Hunter Biden, seen here in their promotional videos, to their board of directors, paying his firm more than $1 million a year.
Here's more from ABC. Continued on.
And Ukraine wasn't the only country where Hunter Biden's business and his father's diplomacy as vice president intersected. It also happened in China.
This video shows Chinese diplomats greeting Vice President Biden as he arrived in Beijing in December of 2013. Right by his side, his son Hunter. Less than 2 weeks later, Hunter's firm had new business, creating an investment fund in China involving the government-controlled Bank of China. With reports, they hope to raise $1.5 billion.
Multiple House Democrat witnesses, including those from the Department of State, the National Security Council, and others, unanimously testified there was a potential appearance of a conflict of interest. These were their witnesses. How much money did Hunter Biden get for being on the board? Well, you start looking at this bank records, according to reports, between April 2014 and October 2015, Burisma paid more than $3.1 million to Devin Archer and Hunter Biden. That's over the course of a year and a half. How do we know this? Some of Devin Archer's bank records were disclosed during an unrelated federal criminal case having nothing to do with Hunter Biden. These bank records show 17 months that Burisma wired two payments of $83,333, not just for 1 month, for 2 months, for 3 months, but for 17 months. According to Reuters, sources report that of the two payments of $83,333 each, one was for Hunter Biden and one Devin Archer. Now, Hunter Biden was paid significantly more than board members for major U.S. Fortune 100 companies, such as Goldman Sachs, Comcast, Citigroup. The typical board member of these Fortune 100 companies, we know they're titans of their industry, they're highly qualified, and as such, they're well compensated. Even so, Hunter Biden was paid significantly more. And this is what's been reported about his work on the board. The Washington Post said, quote, "What specific duties Hunter Biden carried out for Burisma are not fully known," end quote. The New Yorker reported, quote, once or twice a year, he attended Burisma board meetings and energy forums that took place in Europe, end quote. When speaking with ABC News about his qualifications to be on Burisma's board, Hunter Biden didn't point to any of the usual qualifications of a board member. Hunter Biden had no experience in natural.
If your last name wasn't Biden, do you think you would have been asked to be on the board of Burisma?
I don't know.
This is one of 15 investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky, according to a recent public statement made by the current prosecutor general. On January 16, 2015, prosecutors put Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma, on whose Hunter Biden sat on his board, on the country's wanted list for fraud, while Hunter Biden's on the board. Then a British court orders Zlochevsky's $23 million in assets be unfrozen. Why was the money unfrozen? Deputy Assistant Secretary Kent testified to it.
Somebody in the General Prosecutor's Office of Ukraine shut the case, issued a letter to his lawyer, and that money went poof.
So essentially paid a bribe to make the case go away.
That is our strong assumption, yes, sir. A briefing call with the National Security Staff of the Office of the Vice President in February of 2015, I raised my concern that Hunter Biden's status as a board member could create the perception of a conflict of interests.
But House managers didn't tell you that. This is all while Hunter Biden sat on Burisma's board. Did Hunter Biden stop working for Burisma? No. Did Vice President Biden stop leading the Obama administration's foreign policy efforts in Ukraine? No. In the meantime, Vice President Biden is still at the forefront of the U.S.-Ukraine policy. He pledges $1 billion loan guarantee to Ukraine, contingent on its progress in rooting out corruption. Around the same time of the $1 billion announcement, other people raised the issue of a conflict. As Obama administration special envoy for energy policy told The New Yorker, it raised Hunter Biden's participation on the board of Burisma. He raised it directly with the vice president himself. This is a special envoy to President Obama. And the media had questions too. December 8th, 2015, the New York Times publishes an article that Prosecutor General Shokin was investigating Burisma and its owner, Zlochevsky. The Times report, here's their quote, the credibility of the vice president's anti-corruption message may have been undermined by the association of his son, Hunter Biden, end quote, with Burisma and its owner, Zlochevsky. And it wasn't just one reporter who asked questions about the line between Burisma and the Obama administration. As we learned recently through reporting on Fox News, on January 19th, 2016, there was a meeting between Obama administration officials and Ukrainian prosecutors. Ken Vogel, journalist for the New York Times, asked the State Department about this meeting. He wanted more information about the meeting, quote, where U.S. support for prosecutions of Burisma holdings in the United Kingdom and Ukraine were discussed, end quote. But the story never ran. Around the time of the reported story, January 2016, meeting between the Obama administration and Ukrainian officials took place, according to a Ukrainian press report, as translated, says, quote, the U.S. Department of State made it clear to the Ukrainian authorities that it was linking the $1 billion in loan guarantees to the dismissal of Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin, end quote. Now, we all know from the Obama administration and from the words of Vice President Biden himself, he advocated for the Prosecutor General's dismissal. There was ongoing investigation into the oligarch Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma, at the time. We know this because on February 2nd, 2016, The Ukrainian prosecutor general obtained a renewal of a court order to seize the Ukrainian oligarch's assets. A Kiev Post article published on February 4th, 2016, says the oligarch Zlochevsky is, quote, suspected of committing a criminal offense of illicit enrichment, end quote. Over the next few weeks, the vice president had multiple calls with Ukraine's President Poroshenko. Days after the last call, on February 24th, 2016, a DC consultant reached out to the State Department to request a meeting to discuss Burisma. We know what she said because the email was released under the Freedom of Information Act. The consultant explicitly invoked Hunter Biden's name as a board member. In an email summarizing the call, the State Department official says that the consultant, quote, noted that 2 high-profile citizens are affiliated with the company, including Hunter Biden as a board member, end quote. Let's talk about one of the Democrats' central witnesses, Ambassador Yovanovitch. In May 2016, Ambassador Yovanovitch was nominated to be ambassador in Ukraine. Here's what happened when she was preparing for her Senate confirmation hearing.
Congresswoman Stefanik had asked you how the Obama-Biden State Department had prepared you to answer questions about Burisma and Hunter Biden specifically. You recall that?
Yes.
Out of thousands of companies in the Ukraine, the only one that you recall the Obama-Biden State Department preparing you to answer questions about was the one where the vice president's son was on the board. Is that fair?
Yes.
So she's being prepared to come before all of you, and talk about world issues, going to be in charge of the Ukraine. And what did they feel, the company that it was important to brief her on in case she got a question? Burisma. In September 2016, a Ukrainian court cancels the oligarch Zlochevsky's arrest warrant for lack of progress in the case. In mid-January 2017, Burisma announces that all legal proceedings against it and Zlochevsky have been closed. Both of these things happened while Hunter Biden sat on the board of Burisma. Around this time, Vice President Biden leaves office. Years later now, former Vice President Biden publicly details what we know happened, his threat to withhold more than $1 billion in loan guarantees unless Shokin was fired. Here's the Vice President.
I said, no, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
What he didn't say on that video, according to the New York Times, this was the prosecutor investigating Burisma. Second. What he also didn't say on the video was that his son was being paid significant amounts by the oligarch, owner of Burisma, to sit on that board. Only then does Hunter Biden leave the board. He stays on the board until April 2019. Now, in November 2019, Hunter Biden signs an affidavit saying, quote, he's been unemployed and has no other monthly income since May 2019. This was in November of 2019. So we know from after April 2019 to May 2019 through November 2019, he was unemployed by his own statement. April 2019 to November 2019. Despite his resignation from the board, the media has continued to raise the issue relating to potential conflict of interest. On July 22nd, 2019, the Washington Post wrote, the fired prosecutor, General Shokin, quote, believes his ouster was because of his interest in the company, end quote, referring to Burisma. The Post further wrote that, quote, had he remained in his post, he would have questioned Hunter Biden. On July 25th, 2019, 3 days later, President Trump speaks with President Zelensky. He says, the other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with this Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it looks horrible to me.
Okay, so I know that was a little bit lengthy, and I'm okay with that. You know, I normally don't like to play really long clips because people get bored with it, but you really shouldn't have been bored with anything that Pam Bondi was saying. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to look past, you know, some of the, you know, Pam Bondi stuff in the past and stuff like that. I know there's some people out there just don't like her. You know, I believe that she was the ex-state attorney for Florida. I used to live in Florida. I didn't agree with almost anything that came out of her mouth. But this is a little bit different. She's just basically what she's doing is she's just kind of laying out the case. And whether you like Trump, whether you hate Trump, whether you're a rabid Trump supporter or a never Trumper or whatever you are, you have to look at a lot of this stuff with fresh eyes. You have to look at it with a little bit of, you know, unbiased eyes. You have to really kind of look past all this stuff. What was really interesting to me, though, was that all of the major news networks blacked this entire thing out. They did not want people to hear this. And so anytime that the media really tries to avoid something, you really need to start paying attention to what they're trying to keep from you. Now, this is not something that is, you know, a secret or anything like that, but if they can keep the cameras off of these types of scenario, you know, these types of things that happen, then, you know, the fewer people will actually understand what's going on. As we've seen over and over again, sometimes people just get all their news from one source and they just trust the media to tell them what's going on. And this is not really the case anymore. And that's where this whole fake news comes from, because it's not so much that the media is lying about every single thing that comes out. I think where it really resonates, the whole fake news type thing, is where they are not telling the entire truth. They're not giving you all the information. They're allowing you or trying to get you to play a game without all the pieces of the puzzle. And that is the problem. If you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, you're not going to see the entire picture. So as far as this whole impeachment thing, you really have to ask yourself a question. Does Trump really deserve to be impeached because of this? And I think the answer is a resounding no. You know, like I said before, even though I support the president, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything he says. But as far as this goes, yeah, it was kind of cringeworthy because Biden happened to be running for president at the time and still is. But if this was anyone else, you have to ask yourself that question. If this was anyone else, would we be here right now? If this was, let's just say this was another Democratic senator or Republican senator, if it was someone on the Republican side, would we be sitting here right now? I don't think so. I don't think we would be sitting here right now if there was, you know, some sort of Republican, you know, senator or congressperson or some sort of representative, some sort of someone that plays some sort of role in Washington. If they were in Joe Biden's shoes right now, would we be in an impeachment inquiry? No, we would probably see a whole bunch of Democrats and the House in general trying to forward an investigation rather than getting rid of a president. But unfortunately, Joe Biden got himself into this. If you don't remember, Joe Biden, he denied knowing anything about this. But we know that is not true. I reported on this months ago when this whole Burisma thing came out, and I told you that this was going to happen. And you know, if they want to call witnesses and so forth, they're going to have to call Hunter Biden because he is at the center of all of this. Burisma is at the center of all of this. You heard Pam Bondi say that Yovanovitch was kind of coached in how to answer questions about Burisma. Why was there so much cover up when it comes to Burisma? Why was there so much money paid to someone who had absolutely no experience in the energy sector? Why did Chris Hines just bow out and try to cover his own at the last second? You know, all these are very legitimate, rational questions, and it really leads to the heart of the matter. Of the question is, how corrupt was Ukraine, and was Donald Trump in the right in asking about these things? Just let go of the fact that Joe Biden was at the center of it all. That should bother you at a bare minimum. It should bother you, this story of this cover up and this money laundering. If that's where it leads to. It's all fraud. And these are the things that should bother you no matter what side you're on. Now, Trump is not, he's not the best person. He's not the most moral character. He's said and done some shady stuff. But is this enough to throw him out and nullify an election? Because if they were successful for some reason in convincing enough Republican senators to vote for impeachment, that would cause a civil war in this country, because there's so many people. There's so many millions of people that are rabid supporters of Donald Trump that it would literally cause a rift in this country that we have never seen, not even to this day in 2020. So I think that even the majority of people right now are against this whole thing. They're against the impeachment and all that kind of stuff, because there just isn't enough there. And when you hear Pam Bondi actually put the case out in an easy way to understand for people who have not been exposed to this, the whole thing does literally fall apart. It really does. And also, Hunter Biden agrees to pay a child support and paternity case settlement. That came out just 13 hours ago from CNN, other news sources as well. Hunter Biden's at the center of this whole thing, and Joe Biden knows what's going on. He's hiding a lot right now. I can't blame him for trying to hide this kind of stuff. But in the world where it demands the truth, we have to get to the truth. We have to understand what's going on so we can make the best possible decisions as rational human beings. So until the next video, I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.